America once confidently believed its Phantom would forever soar untouched in the global sky. But on May 20th, 2025, that illusion shattered in just 7 seconds. A hypersonic interceptor missile launched from Russian territory tore apart a B-2 Spirit, a $2.1 billion stealth bomber, while it was on a mission near Belarus. Debris rained down like fiery embers, creating an explosive fireball hundreds of feet high, triggering a military earthquake that rippled across the Eurasian continent. For the first time in modern history, a symbol of America's absolute power was neutralized mid-mission and at the Pentagon. As the final signal from the B-2 vanished, an unprecedented response mechanism was activated. 18 hours later, Russia was engulfed in a firestorm. Aircraft carriers approached the Baltic Sea. 10-ton bunker buster bombs plummeted from the stratosphere onto command centers. Tomahawk missiles weaved through forests, slipping past radar gaps. Multi-layered defense systems were blown apart like rotten wood. Over 3,000 soldiers were caught in a storm of metal and explosions that no war simulation system in the world could have even begun to replicate. This was no longer just a battle. This was a strategic message etched into the exploding concrete of Russia's western defense line. Shooting down a B-2 wasn't just destroying a target, it was opening the gates to America's wrath. If this story leaves you breathless, as if standing in the thick of battle, hit like, share, and follow, because even more brutal engagements lie ahead. America's pride shot down. No one thought it could happen. At 6:42 a.m. on May 20th, 2025, a B-2 Spirit bomber, the U.S. Air Force's $2.1 billion Pride, was shredded in the sky near the Belarusian border by a Russian anti-air missile. No warning, no distress signal. Just a brilliant red flash blossoming in the stratosphere, followed by a massive fireball. Like an early sunrise, turning everything within a 10-kilometer radius into hell. The B-2, designed to be undetectable, had been detected and destroyed. The impossible feat was accomplished by the advanced S-500 Prometi air defense system, deployed to the Smolensk region just 5 weeks prior in a move analysts called strategically defensive. But no one anticipated it would be activated in a real combat scenario and against something considered invincible. That day, the B-2 was on a silent strategic observation mission, a term for deep penetration operations to collect enemy radar and communication signals. It flew at an altitude of 50,000 feet. At Mach 1.1, utilizing multi-layered stealth technology, a radar-absorbing skin, non-reflective flying wing shape, and cooled exhaust to avoid infrared detection. But Russia had its answer. The 4-person S-500 crew, 2 technicians, 1 commanding officer, and 1 electronics officer detected a feint. Blurry interference. 470 kilometers to the west. Data from the 90 Wayland 6A phased array radar was quickly relayed to the processing center, where an AI algorithm issued a warning: target probability stealth aircraft, reliability 92%. In less than 7 seconds, the 77N6N1 missile launched from an underground bunker near Bely, accelerating to Mach 14 times the speed of sound, almost impossible to intercept. The missile followed a lofted trajectory into the stratosphere, then locked onto its target with a dual electro-optical seeker, positioned by the temperature differential from the American aircraft's engines. At an altitude of 4,300 feet, the missile directly impacted the B-2's right wing. The sound of the explosion was heard over 40 kilometers away, debris scattering like a rain of molten metal, creating a vortex of fire hundreds of meters long before disappearing into the forest near Vitebsk. Local witnesses described the sky just ripped open. Then there was a brilliant orange glow, twice the size of the sun. The fire spread to the nearby forest, requiring 12 Belarusian fire trucks to intervene. Windows of residential buildings shattered within a 3-kilometer radius. But the terrifying part wasn't the material damage. It was the symbol that had been shot down.
Targets locked.
The B-2
God
Spirit
bless the
wasn't
Republic.
merely an aircraft. It was
The
America's
night lit up
statement
with
to the
strobing
world.
flashes.
When we act, no one sees us. They only see the consequences. Throughout 30 years of operation, that Phantom had never been damaged in combat. Now, with a single launch, a button press from a Russian radar station, that myth was torn apart for all the world to see. At the Pentagon, the operations room of U.S. Strategic Command went on red alert. One advisor exclaimed, "No way, they just shot down our B-2." And if they can do that, anything is possible. A door had opened, and beyond it lay an abyss of war that no one dared enter, except America. A counterattack with the weight of a god. Just 32 minutes after the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber was shot down, the entire Pentagon erupted in the emergency meeting room. Senior generals stared at satellite screens. The image of the burning B-2 wreckage in the snow-covered forest appeared vividly, its weak positioning signal then fading out. No one spoke much. They understood this wasn't just the loss of an aircraft, but a direct blow to America's pride. At Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford immediately went into combat readiness. The colossal ship, valued at over $13 billion, along with 4 cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 2 supply ships, rapidly headed toward the Baltic Sea. Near the Russian border, on the flight deck, the roar of F-35C and F-A-18 Super Hornet fighter jets ripped through the sky, along with E-2D early warning aircraft circling overhead simultaneously. From Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, 4 B-21 Raiders, the most advanced stealth bombers, quietly departed the runway. They carried GBU-57 bunker buster bombs, weapons weighing over 13 tons, capable of penetrating 60 meters of concrete and exploding deep underground like an entire skyscraper. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive aircraft carrier in U.S. naval history, led the strike group close to the border with Kaliningrad, the closest point of contact between NATO and Russian territory. Accompanying the Ford were 6 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 2 cruise missile cruisers, 3 Virginia-class submarines trailing from the south, and 4 supply ships that had completed fuel distribution the previous afternoon. On the aircraft carrier's deck, F-35Cs were successively pushed into catapult positions, each engine roaring in the flashing red lights, like a countdown to a nightmare. Beneath the sea, 58 vertical launch tubes opened almost simultaneously. Tomahawk Block 5, the most modern cruise missile, exited its launch tube at supersonic speed, activating its turbofan engine to maintain an altitude no higher than a 10-story building. Its Tercom guidance system integrating 3D terrain maps, military GPS, and an infrared seeker allowed it to veer close to forests, skim over lakes, and loop around hills. Every flight path was pre-programmed to penetrate enemy radar networks. As Tomahawks began to swarm Smolensk, from the air, 4 B-21 Raiders and 2 B-2 Spirits approached western Russian airspace at altitudes exceeding 60,000 feet. Their composite, radar-absorbing outer shells and integrated flying wing design resulted in such faint return signals that no system had enough time to analyze them properly. They carried the most powerful penetrating bombs, the GBU-57AAB, weighing 13,600 kilos each, specifically designed to destroy command bunkers and facilities hundreds of meters underground. When dropped, these bombs didn't explode on the surface, they burrowed straight into the earth before erupting like artificial volcanoes. From underground launch wells in Poland, Lithuania, and Romania, mobile launchers opened. 30 Pershing II's medium-range ballistic missiles upgraded with hypersonic glide vehicles streaked into the sky like silver meteors, climbing straight to the stratosphere, then folding and plummeting at Mach 8, with a mere 3-meter margin of error. Each warhead found its target using a self-correcting algorithm. Russian air defense systems activated urgently. The 96L6TL radar operated at maximum power, and S-500 and S-400 launchers began sending interceptor missiles skyward. On the ground, Panzer SM automated cannons fired, creating a dense steel net. 30mm rounds ripped through the night sky like an inverted rain of fire. But Tomahawks skimmed the ground, B-21s were out of sight, and Pershing IIs fell from the sky like meteors. Each defense point could only fire for 4-6 seconds before losing tracking capability. At Smolensk's military-industrial facility, Number 3 AHSM-ER missile slammed into the main administrative building, detonating reserve ammunition inside. The explosion created a 250-meter high pillar of fire, destroying the adjacent building. The aftershocks rattled geological sensors in Latvia. In the fields outside the city, radar and antenna debris began to fall like a rain of molten metal. The Western Military District's satellite communication station was completely shut down after being hit by 3 consecutive cruise missiles. Each missile struck the power center, causing the control circuits to burn brightly, spreading throughout the building in seconds. The cycle of destruction lasted nearly 2 hours. Missile stations, radars, and ammunition depots all were targeted in sequence. Waves of attacks followed each other in a pre-programmed logic from the tactical command server, where AI managed real-time destruction effectiveness assessments. Rewriting world military history. On the outskirts of Smolensk, trees were split lengthwise, stumps charred, trunks broken. Bomb craters as deep as wells dotted the satellite map, each long smoky streak marking the path of a ground-skimming tomahawk. Beneath the still hot earth, GBU-57A-B concrete penetrating bomb casings left craters with a destructive radius 3 times greater than predicted. Military infrastructure in the region was gutted. Fuel depots were incinerated, exposed radars obliterated, runways fragmented. Command posts were torn apart by hypersonic ballistic missiles. The central digital communication hub was completely silenced. Air defense centers in Bryansk, Kursk, and Smolensk lost internal communication for the first 3 hours. Inside survival bunkers, strategic officers had to use paper maps, rulers, and classic military radio transmitters to restore temporary connections. Hundreds of soldiers were pulled from the rubble, many lying motionless on stretchers, faces covered in white dust from the explosions, settled like a permanent layer of ash. Along Route Q145, a logistical artery running south of Smolensk, long lines of military trucks arrived, carrying body bags, bomb disposal equipment, and mine detectors from decades past. Never had an event caused Russian units to retreat entirely from a strategic area overnight. In the field hospitals, the only sounds were breathing machines, the whirring of evacuation helicopters, and the heavy footsteps of guards in the damp corridors. In the US, Pentagon offices were lit all night. All units involved in Operation Retribution moved into the phase of collecting, analyzing, and reporting results. Data from RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance UAVs showed over 70% of targets were rendered combat ineffective. The estimated damage far exceeded initial predictions. In Brussels, NATO raised the Baltic region security alert to its highest level since the Crimea crisis. In Warsaw, Patriot PAC-3 systems were rapidly moved eastward. Romania shifted all its GM-200 radar systems to high-frequency operation. From the Mediterranean, a U.S. Ohio-class submarine received orders to stand by, carrying over 150 cruise missiles, awaiting a signal from European command. Global analysts redefined the threshold of deterrence. When a B-2 was shot down, the ripple effect activated the entire counterattack machine, stretching from the Atlantic to Russia's western border. The repercussions of the incident reached even the Pacific. Japan increased submarine surveillance near Okinawa. Taiwan raised its airspace alert level for 48 hours. China remained silent, but satellite imagery showed DF-27 mobile launchers in Xinjiang had been moved from their bunkers. The world entered a new reality. A counterattack organized in less than 20 hours, mobilizing over 100 precision strike weapons from 3 spatial layers: ground, stratosphere, and low orbit, demonstrated that the U.S. had redefined strategic response capabilities at the ultimate level. At the scene, battlefield cleanup crews worked day and night. The wreckage of radars, missiles, anti-aircraft guns, and coordination stations was marked with red paint, numbered, and tagged with delayed explosion warnings. Each location had fragments deeply embedded in the soil, piercing fuel tanks, bunkers, and concrete walls. Above, the sky brightened. A thin layer of dust covered the burned forest, creating an orange-purple halo. The scene no longer evoked feelings of victory or defeat. It was like a harsh message sent to the entire world: overconfidence in defense systems can lead to irreversible consequences. All content above is purely simulated, hypothetical, strategic, and analytical. It is not intended to incite violence, promote political bias, or provoke military action or war. The content is solely our personal simulation, hypothesis, and analysis of what could occur. Any misinterpretations will not be accepted. We are not responsible for any understanding or application derived from the video content. Viewers should exercise their own judgment, verify information, and engage critically. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. If you're passionate about military topics, enjoy analyzing, and like to formulate hypotheses, please stay with our channel. If you found this video interesting, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any daily updates from us. Now, You can watch some of our latest and most popular videos currently on screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.